Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision relating to the licensing of charging publicly available, privately owned car parks, to require local authorities to introduce a licensing system for such car parks, to enable local authorities to recover the costs of such a licensing scheme from car park operators and for related purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are sent to this place essentially for two reasons: to represent the interests of our constituents and to ensure the good passage of legislation that both enhances and protects the well-being of our citizens. And I believe that this proposed bill does both of those things. Madam Deputy Speaker, I will start by briefly reminding the House that there are essentially two types of car park providers in this country. The first of those are local authority controlled car parks, and they are extensively covered by legislation. The second, though, privately available car parks are much less so covered by legislation. Now, I'm not going to stand here today and say that all privately available car parks are operated in an irresponsible way. Indeed, I think the vast majority of providers treat their consumers with the respect that they should deserve. However, there are all too many cases, not only in my constituency, but in speaking to right honourable and honourable members up and down the country, of some rogue car park operators who use very unscrupulous practices indeed, and the purpose of this bill is to address that particular problem. Indeed, it is an issue that not only right honourable and honourable members have raised here and elsewhere, but it is an issue that the Consumers Association and organisations such as the Automobile Association have expressed considerable concern about as well. So essentially, what is the problem? Well, often the experience is that those consumers who have used a private car park that is publicly available receive in the post several days later a very threatening demand for a so-called penalty payment from the provider, and they allege that the consumer has not purchased the correct ticket. Yet even when that consumer can produce evidence that they did indeed buy, for example, a pay and display ticket, the privately run operator simply says, well, it wasn't displayed properly. If one contrasts that with the way local authorities run their car parks, if somebody can show proof of purchase of a ticket, then their fine is cancelled. The second area of concern is the way that some unscrupulous, as I say, a minority of private car park operators can again demand payment from people for the most minor and accidental infractions. For example, a wheel that is just touching the dividing white line between spaces, or in one case that I came across where somebody had a demand for payment because as they were seeking to leave the car park, they were stuck in a queue of traffic and they were timed out by the clock. Again, contrast that with the way council-run car parks operate, where they have an appeals system, and reasonable appeals are often successful indeed. In almost two-thirds of cases, appeals are successful in that case. But the third and perhaps most disturbing and insidious aspect of some of these unscrupulous private car park providers is the sheer scale of the fine, in inverted commas, that they are seeking to levy against the consumer. Often in a threatening letter, a demand for £70 is made, which is hiked up within a fortnight to £100 and then hiked up further still as time goes by. Again, compare that to local authority-controlled car parks, where typically the fine will be £50, which is reduced to £25 if paid within 28 days. And you can see there is quite a difference. And the level and the scale of the threatening and aggressive letters that are sent to many consumers is causing a great deal of concern, particularly amongst the most vulnerable and elderly constituents of honourable and right honourable members. And many people simply feel intimidated into paying this apparent fine, which of course is not a fine in any sort of criminal sense, because they just want the problem to go away. But even people who perhaps wouldn't be classed as vulnerable have come to me and other members deeply concerned that threats to destroy their credit rating, threats to send in the bailiffs, threats to seek county court judgments against people mean that many people simply pay this demand and as a result this is where some of these unscrupulous private car parking firms are making an awful lot of money in a very unfair way. And it's starting to have a detrimental effect on many town centre businesses as well. I have plenty of evidence of legitimate businesses in town centres who come to me to say that where these rogue private car parks operate, that actually it's damaging business because people say that they are simply not prepared to go into the town centre to shop or to go out for entertainment purposes because they fear they're going to get an arbitrary penalty notice issued against them by one of these car park providers. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, the question is, what is the answer to this problem? Well, it is certainly not within my instincts to immediately reach for regulation or reach for the rule book, and I certainly wouldn't advocate establishing some sort of national agency or some sort of national quango. The government is quite rightly seeking to reduce the number of quangos we have, despite the best efforts of another place. And I certainly...
Private conversations getting much too loud in the chamber. If people want to have private conversations, I suggest they go outside. Mr. Henry Smith.
I'm very grateful to you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm certainly also not proposing that local authorities should take over the patrolling of private car parks available to the public, nor am I proposing that the resources of the police should be used for that purpose either. What I am proposing in this bill is that simply local authorities with a licensing function should have the ability to license the operation of publicly available private car parks, just in the same way that local licensing committees make decisions over licensing of publicans for the sale of alcohol or license cab drivers for the running of taxis in an area. In a similar way, I believe we could have local democratic control that has a local focus to be able to ensure that there is better practice from, as I say, some of the minority of unscrupulous car park operators. Madam Deputy Speaker, this proposal also would be at no cost to the council taxpayer or the taxpayer generally, because simply the system would be paid for by a modest application fee paid by the private car park operator to the licensing authority when applying to run such a licence. Madam Deputy Speaker, coming before this House shortly in the Freedom Bill will be proposals to really restrict the use of wheel clamping to the restriction of wheel clamping, and I very much welcome that. But I fear that an unintended consequence of that is that simply those unscrupulous wheel clampers will simply switch to issuing demands for payments from people in the same way that some of these private car parks do. And I believe, therefore, that this bill could be a useful way of closing that loophole which otherwise might exist. Now, I know in legislation already that there is provision for local authorities to be able to operate with private car parks. However, that takes the compliance of both the private car park operator and the local authority to do that. And of course, an unscrupulous provider is unlikely to agree to work with the local authority to control that. I also think self-regulation might be a possible solution, but so far the British Parking Association have not introduced any appeals process. They've got a very small pilot scheme, but that hasn't been effective yet. So therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is my pleasure to propose this motion today. Thank you.